Cain and Abel, the first brothers in human history. Now, just stop and think about that for a second. Imagine being the first kids ever born. Your parents, Adam and Eve, the people who literally walked in paradise and then lost it. That's crazy, right? Adam and Eve had memories of perfection, the garden, walking with God, peace, beauty, no shame. But Cain and Abel, they never saw that. They were born outside, born into exile, born into a world already cursed. So picture their childhood. Every day, their parents probably told them stories about Eden. We used to live in a place with no pain, no thorns, no death, but we lost it. That means Cain and Abel grew up in the shadow of their parents' mistake. The pressure, the shame, the longing, it's all hanging over them. Cain becomes a farmer. Makes sense, right? The ground is cursed, but someone has to work it. Abel becomes a shepherd. Two brothers, two different paths. And for a while, it seems balanced. Food from the fields, flocks from the pastures. But then comes the moment that changes everything. The offerings. Cain brings crops. Abel brings the firstborn lamb from his flock. And here's where it gets messy. God accepts Abel's offering, but not Cain's. And now, let's be honest, right? Doesn't that feel unfair? Cain's out there breaking his back in the fields, wrestling with thorns, sweating in the sun. He brings what he's got, and God says no. Meanwhile, Abel slaughtered the lamb, and God's like, yes, that's it. Why? What's the deal here? Some people say it's because Cain gave cut vina. Some people say Abel gave his best, while Cain just gave something. But the truth is, the Bible doesn't spell it out clearly, and maybe that's on purpose. Maybe we're supposed to wrestle with it, just like Cain did. And Cain, oh, he takes it hard. You can almost feel the heat in his chest, rejection, jealousy, anger. And then God steps in and actually warns him. Sin is crouching at your door. It wants to devour you, but you've got to master it. It's like God is saying, Cain, this is your chance. Don't go down this path. Don't let jealousy own you. But Cain doesn't listen. He calls out Abel to the field. Maybe he smiles when he does it, trying to act normal. Maybe Abel has no clue what's coming. And then Cain picks up a stone, and in one single furious act, humanity's first blood is spilled. The first murder, a brother killing a brother. And from that moment on, the ground isn't just cursed, it's stained. Abel's blood seeps into the earth, and history takes a dark turn. Now, here's where the theory starts to spin in my head because I can't stop asking this question. What if it didn't happen that way? What if Abel never died?
Alright, so let's just play this out for a second. Cain's standing in that field. His hands are shaking, his chest is burning. He's about to bring the stone down on his brother. But what if something different happens? What if Cain hesitates? What if for just a split second, Abel looks up at him with those wide eyes and Cain can't go through with it? Or maybe the stone falls, but it doesn't kill Abel, maybe it just wounds him. Maybe Abel stumbles, bleeding, but alive. Or, and I kind of love this idea, maybe God himself steps in. Maybe there's a sudden gust of wind and Cain's grip slips. Maybe lightning cracks or Cain's strength just fails him. Whatever the reason, Abel survives. Now picture the fallout of that. Because Abel wasn't just the younger brother, he was the one God looked at with favor. His sacrifice was the one accepted. His life carried innocence and faith. So if Abel lives, that line of blessing, that divine favor, it would pass through him, through his children, through his descendants. And that changes everything. In our world, the first cities, the first bits of civilization, they all come from Cain's line, the line of the murderer, the line that starts with rage and blood. But if Abel lived, it wouldn't be Cain building those cities. It would be Abel's family shaping the world. Can you imagine that? A civilization born from Abel's faith instead of Cain's anger? A world built not on violence and vengeance, but maybe on peace and sacrifice. It makes you wonder, would humanity have been gentler? Would history look less bloody? Or would we just found another excuse to fight anyway? And here's the crazy part. If Abel lives, Seth probably never gets born. Remember, Adam and Eve only had Seth after Abel was killed as a sort of replacement son. And it's Seth's line that leads to Noah, then Abraham, then Israel, and eventually, the story of Jesus. But if Abel never dies, Abel himself might have carried that sacred line, which is wild to think about. Because it means the entire story of redemption might have looked totally different. Maybe Abel's kids would have been the ones chosen. Maybe Abel's line would have led straight to the Messiah. So now you've got this massive split in the timeline. In one version, Abel dies and we get Cain's violence, but Seth's redemption. In the other, Abel lives and history takes a path we can barely even imagine. But here's the thought that messes with me the most. What if Abel did survive, and the world still turned violent anyway? What if, no matter which line carried the blessing, humanity's heart would have dragged us right back to bloodshed? Because maybe, just maybe, the real problem isn't Cain versus Abel. Maybe the real problem is all of us.
Here's the part that keeps me up at night. What if Abel was always meant to die? I mean, think about it. The Bible says his blood cried out from the ground. Not just that it spilled, it spoke. Like his death wasn't just random violence, but something bigger, almost like a prophecy. If Abel had survived, that voice, the voice of innocent blood, would never have existed. And maybe that's the point. Maybe his death was more than just tragedy. Maybe it was meant to foreshadow something. Because fast forward to the New Testament, and you get this comparison. Abel's blood cried out for justice, but another innocent blood, Christ, cried out for forgiveness. Do you see how heavy that is? Abel's story, the first murder in human history, might have been designed to set the stage for the cross. Innocent slain by jealousy, by rage, by sin itself. And here's where it hits me. If Abel had lived, maybe we'd never understand the full weight of sacrifice. Maybe his blood had to fall, so one day we could see the contrast, that Jesus' blood wouldn't just cry out for justice, but for mercy. It's almost like Abel was the shadow and Jesus was the fulfillment. But even with all that said, I can't help asking, what if? What if Abel had walked away from that field? Would humanity have been less violent? Would our story look brighter? Or would we still have torn ourselves apart just under a different name, a different excuse, a different war? Because let's be honest, Cain didn't invent jealousy. You didn't invent rage. He was just the first one to let it consume him. And since then, humanity has been repeating his choice over and over. So maybe Abel had to die. Or maybe Cain's rage would have just found another victim anyway. And that's where the mystery sets. Was Abel's death destiny or just tragedy?
Here's the thing though. This story isn't just about two brothers thousands of years ago. It's about us, right now. Because let's be real, we all have a little bit of Cain in us. That jealousy, that frustration, that voice in your head that says, why not me? Why them? It's dangerous, right? You see someone else succeed, someone else get noticed, and suddenly you feel smaller. That bitterness grows, that anger crouches at your door, just like God warned Cain. And if you let it in, it consumes you. But we also have a little bit of Abel in us. That innocence, that longing to be accepted, that simple faith that says, I'll give the best I have. Abel's heart was pure, and in a way we all want to be like that, to live in a way that pleases God, that feels right, that matters. So here's the question. Which voice do you listen to? Cain's path leads to destruction. Anger, envy, pride. It isolates you, hardens you, poisons everything you touch. Abel's path leads to faith, to grace, to something bigger than yourself. And maybe that's the real reason this story is in the Bible. Not just to tell us about the first murder, but to make us ask which brother we're becoming. Are you letting jealousy eat you alive? Are you living with the kind of faith that God looks at and says, yes, that's it? And then that finding haunting question. What if Abel had lived? Would the world be different? Maybe. Maybe not. But here's what I do know. You and I are alive right now. We're living. And the choices we make, they decided the story we leave behind. So, which story are you writing? Cain's or Abel's?